My biological parents were meth addicts, so I was in the foster care system until I was 4. When I was 9, my first adopted parents declared a failed adoption, and another family took me in as their daughter. My new parents really tried to help me, but they didn't know how. I was eventually sent to live temporarily with another family when I was 15. After that family kicked me out, I had nowhere to turn. I was 17 years old, and that's when I turned to the streets. I take responsibility for many of the problems with my family. There were a lot of anger issues in my life from being passed around, and I was pretty mean to people who tried to love me. I'm working to rebuild a relationship with my parents, but they struggled to trust me. After 3 years on the streets, I'm in housing now and just gave birth to my second child, a son. Having children has made me want to make peace with my family and deal with all the anger. Life's way too short to be angry all the time.
I got my sense of humor from my dad. He's one of the funniest guys I know. He still gets drunk every night, but he's doing his best. Growing up around alcoholics is tough, and I needed to get away from all that. Unfortunately, I've burned most all my bridges. It's really hard out there, being homeless, and I got on some people's bad side. I had to sleep with guys just to survive. They took advantage of my situation. I did not choose my lifestyle. I did not choose to become a whore. Very few people actually choose that lifestyle. They get thrust into it. It's kind of like getting thrust into a cage. I found transitional youth through my Job Corps caseworker. She gave me the number. I called and set up an interview. I'm now living in one of the transitional youth houses. I feel like I've changed quite a bit. I've learned a lot about myself. Job skills, work ethic, social skills. It'll be a good feeling to finally become stable. I'm pretty sure I'll have an apartment and a house. Hopefully, both my parents will still be alive to see, and I'll have a relationship with my family again.
I never knew my father. He was a drug dealer who never came around. My biological mother was booked for murder 1 when I was 9 years old. Physical and emotional abuse was part of life after that. The worst was being locked out of my house for the night and trying to find a safe place to sleep. Sleeping in locked outhouses wasn't ideal, but they were the best way to avoid crackheads. I was 18 years old when I became homeless. It was awful, and I never want to go back. Finding transitional youth, however, was one of the bright spots from my time on the streets. Now I volunteer at the Outreach Center 3 nights a week. I have Asperger's, which comes with a host of work and social challenges. Volunteering has provided structure to my day and helped give me a sense of purpose. Just recently, the state told me it plans to cut my disability benefits. If my appeal doesn't work, I could be on the streets again. I don't know if I can handle that.
Until I was 11 years old, I thought it was normal for dads to touch their kids. All kinds of abuse were a part of life, and I didn't know any different. Arguments always ended in violence. That's just the way things were. My dad is now in prison, and my mom is out of my life. Foster care was pretty rough, too. I kept running away, so they put me in a group home. I was homeless by my senior year of high school. Even then, I woke up at the crack of dawn to make it to school. People tell you there's not much hope for abused kids or kids of addicts. They often become abusers and addicts themselves. But I will not be like them. They will not define my future. Several years ago, I found myself slipping into alcoholism, but I will not be like my mom. I was homeless for 5 years until recently. I just got my own apartment, and I am studying English at Portland Community College. My life's mission is to single-handedly erase the phrase whole nother from the English language.
At some point, I realized my parents were emotionally and verbally abusive. I was never good enough. So I joined a gang and was heavily involved in all sorts of stuff. There was trouble at school, more trouble at home. By 15, I had had enough of them both. When the police returned their runaway, my parents said I had made my choice. I guess they had too. A couple years later, Job Corps accepted me, but I was kicked out and landed on the streets of Portland at 18. Homeless in Portland was way better than being homeless on my reservation. I ran with a tight group of other street kids for about 3 years. We did everything together, including drugs. But soon after I turned 21, life got serious. My mom drank herself to death that year. 2 weeks later, my brother was murdered. A year after that, a close cousin blew his head off with a shotgun. Within a few months, my best friend killed himself. 2 years of death woke me up. I've been off meth for a year. Alcohol for 10 months. I don't even smoke anymore. I'm wide awake now. There's too much to live for. I've almost finished my GED, and then it's college.
Life was hard from the beginning. A suicidal mom, an absent dad. I was molested by my stepfather's brother when I was 8 years old. At age 15, the cutting began. I was numb, but when I cut, at least I felt. My family has never understood me, and after high school graduation, they don't want me. Sleeping on the streets is tough, for girls especially. Couch surfing wasn't much safer. Nice guys aren't always so nice once the door is locked. I was 18 the first time it happened. I'm back on the streets after living on my own for 5 years. This time I'm pregnant and need to find housing before I give birth. One charity said it would help, but I refused to give up my baby. It's really hard to get help when you aren't on drugs, alcohol, or mentally ill. You just have to keep moving ahead to hopefully get ahead. Next fall, I'm enrolling at Portland Community College, and I'm determined to get off the streets for good. For my own sake and the sake of my baby.
I've been homeless off and on since I was 14 years old. My parents didn't want me. I lived with my grandma, but she couldn't afford me any longer. I stayed with a friend for a while. One day, he found rocks and meth at school. We smoked it, and I got hooked. That was the end of football and school. I'm in control now. I haven't touched meth in 3 months. I was married once. A few months after I got out of prison, my wife left me for one of my friends. Honestly, it wasn't working, and both of us wanted out. Now I travel all over the country, staying for 3 or 4 months in a city. I've been in Portland for a year, but it's just a stop along the way. Having a roof over my head when I was married was amazing, but now I'm used to the streets. I can't fall asleep in a house anymore. Travel, that's my thing. I'm free, and I don't burden anyone. Maybe I'll go to Maine.